Okay, JP, you had minutes from the last meeting, if you can get them to us by next meeting. And you're gonna get a couple minutes for us. Mayor isn't here. Point of, I need to talk about schedule. Joe asked that the $80,000 be continued. We're not gonna put a public hearing on, we're not gonna discuss it tonight for our next meeting. But our next meeting would be the day before Thanksgiving, so I'd like to do Tuesday the 26th. Can you guys make it? Everybody here? No?
I'll do my best.
It's Tuesday's bad.
Thanksgiving week at a grocery store.
But you're in charge. Can somebody else run it for an hour and go back? That's okay. You're going to be out of business when Amazon starts doing
Oh, thanks, yeah. I appreciate that.
Well, I have to do the 26th because the reason I have to do it is because the following week is the meeting, so and I don't want to do it the day before Thanksgiving. So
I'll do my best.
you're okay, Jen?
Yep.
JP, you're okay?
26.
It's a Tuesday night, 5 o'clock. I could change the time. It's unusual. Will that help you?
I will do my best to get here.
Does it matter whether it's the 6 or 5?
6 would be better.
Well, I like to get the staff a chance to get out, so if,
That's true.
Whatever is necessary, so it's a holiday week, so I'm sure I'll be all over the place with,
what do you want, Billy? You want 5? I gotta post it. 5:30? It's easy for you. You don't know if you can make it anyway.
Well, do 5 and I'll do my best to get here.
Okay, 5 o'clock, the 26th is the next meeting. New business. The first 2 items are savings. We call them savings. 2 questions. First question is, what was our free cash and retained earnings allotment this time around?
the free cash was certified at $1,631,401.
Okay.
And the retained earnings, I did not write down, but it was 1 million, what is it, 1.7?
So did you say 1.6?
Yes,
1.6 for free cash, 1.7 for retained earnings.
I think so. I will verify that and get that back.
All right, just send us an email.
Yeah.
And the balance of our general stabilization fund as of September 30th?
Balance in the general stabilization, $2,685,735.86.
So that's the interest piling up. So this would make it 2.8 when we add the 200,000. And how much in the capital?
That one is $1,746,308.05.
300 and what?
308.05.
Now, the mayor mentioned before she left, and I think, Billy, you were here, that there's a policy on general stabilization to put at least $200,000 in per year, and in capital stabilization, there's some kind of formula which values it. And that's required because of the debt.
Exactly. It's based on, right, it's based on many factors, but big factors in our debt.
Right, no, it certainly does, yeah, I just didn't know if there was X plus Y plus 1/3.
Well, it probably is, but I'm not
Okay,
gonna go
good.
there.
I'd love to see it if there is. And you're aware of it.
Well, you could ask Val that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I have no questions. I like saving money. So I have no problem moving both of these. Do you have any questions, gentlemen?
No, I think it was pretty cut and dry, and if we don't save this money, then we're forced to spend it, forced to create debt, which is counterproductive in my eyes. So we kind of almost have to save it, otherwise we have to spend it. So
Capital stabilization, as I
we need
recall,
to save it.
was created for the emergency need to replace a capital item. We need a new fire truck, we just burned one up.
Right.
Uh-oh, here comes the math queen. He just asked for the formula for the capital stabilization. So I hope it's really long and it's a quadratic equation.
That's why I'm here. I knew you were going to ask.
I wasn't going to ask that. Right here, pointing.
You can send it to me and I'll be a happy camper.
No, we, in our new financial policies that we did to get our bond rating up, we agreed that the general fund debt minus the debt exclusion amount and the enterprise debt amount should be 2%. And if it falls less than that, the remainder of the money would have to go either into OPEB or capital stabilization. Now, since we put OPEB in the budget, and the plan was to increase it by 10% per year until 2035, when we're actually putting in our entire, well, they don't call it an ARC anymore, but whatever, the ARC. And that should be feasible because by then our assessment should be done. It should be totally
What year?
amortized. The retirement assessment.
No, I understand, but what year, when you say 2035?
Well, by 2035,
we
but
should-
it'll be done before then,
Yeah, that would-
probably a couple years before
Flip
then.
them around to see it.
It should be totally done by then, so the hope is that at that point, we will be putting in the 2 million into the OPEB every year instead of,
The 2 million that we
or whatever it is at
maintains
that point.
liability
Right,
for that
So-
year,
yes.
as opposed to for that year and for the
You're
future.
not going to talk about unfunded liability at this meeting.
Yes,
We
okay.
don't want nightmares.
Yes. But anyway, it'll get us where we'll be as good as most communities are.
I think we're
So-
better than most
Better,
communities.
So currently
Our
this year,
stabilization accounts are better than almost every community.
when you take out, yeah, the general stabilization, I did the same as last year, just to stay on an even keel of keeping it at where it is. The capital stabilization, our debt was like .008, the general fund debt of the general fund budget, and it needs to be 2%. So 2% is like 877,000, so I subtracted out what our debt is from the 2%, and then I subtracted out what we put into OPEB, and the remainder of it is what is going into capital stabilization.
That's the formula. Okay.
That's the formula.
Thank you.
That's why, and being an accountant, I had to do those cents. I should have just rounded it, but, so that's what that's about.
We'll work on that.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right,
you can round it
so
up if you want, that's fine.
I would entertain a motion to approve both of these at the same time.
I so move to approve both.
I second.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve both stabilization account requests, 368,252 for capital and 200,000 for general stabilization. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we have a public hearing scheduled for this. One of you will be there. If someone asks why, like this dummy asked, why is it so specific to 368,252?
Yeah.
You'll
well,
have to
The
answer.
reason I'm here tonight is because I have surgery tomorrow, so I'm out for 2 weeks. So
Oh, well, then it's Jeff, and you may have to figure out that
Yeah.
formula too, Jen. You have to go to math
If you
class.
would send me if you have it. I mean, I
If
wrote it down.
somebody
it's the
asks.
financial policy that's actually in the budget.
Oh, okay, yeah. So then
If you
I
read
have
through it, it says general fund debt. So you just take the debt minus out the exclusion, minus out the enterprise debt. And I can give you the amounts. I'll email you the amounts.
Okay.
Will you send that email, please? Copy.
Well, thank you both. We're going on to CPA stuff. You're welcome to stay if you want.
Oh, fun. I think I will.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie, we're not going to do the 80,000 tonight because Joe McCoy isn't here this week and he wanted to hold off on it. We talked about that at the meeting. He's in
a pickle.
Yeah, it's his baby, so he asked if you hold it off. And apparently that has more to do with, if we're approved now, they'll get it out to bid and everything, and then we'll know, we won't be building anything until spring anyways. So the three requests in front of us for CPA requests are all approved 3-0, the chair of that committee, and they're all from Mr. Bagg. So rather than me muddy the waters by trying to explain Jeff's requests, Jeff, you're up. The first one is 298087 for the closing costs.
Thank you. So it's $2,980. So there's a memo that I don't know. Does the finance subcommittee member, did they get the memo that went to CTA?
We got your letter, yes?
They got this packet here, I believe.
You have a letter from you. It was in the text.
Oh, it is, okay, all right.
Saw that.
It's your letter plus the
Yep.
Yeah.
CPA agreement. And guys, I also gave out to both of you the CPA projects and budget that Jamie so nicely puts together in case you didn't get
Left
it.
right here. Is that my copy?
Did I give you one?
Yes, and
If you want to reference it. So this is coming out of open space. Go ahead.
So this is going back to our successful acquisition of 23 acres off of East Street. During the closing procedure, some unexpected costs were identified, and the procurement officer was, so Michael Owens was present, and I think the closing happened on June 25th. So if we look back on the date, it was probably a Thursday. And in order to meet the state's objective of closing by June 30th, there was an inherent need to close that day. So what happened was the procurement officer wrote a personal check to cover those costs, and to make sure that the closing happened. And
We never paid him back.
well, we did, and so you know, the planning department has access to the zoning incentive funds, which are used carefully, but they're used at my discretion. So, and it doesn't require an appropriation or approval.
It's in your budget.
It is, yes. Well, yeah, it's a
It's a fund.
fund, it's an account, yes. So I chose to make sure that Mr. Owens could be recovered his costs, and so we paid him, and now I'm just asking for the CPA to fill back those funds to the zoning incentive fund, which we've been using for grant funding matches and other projects that have been
It's a
successful.
zoning fund, that's what you use.
Yep. So there was closing costs, there was a filing at the registry of deeds, and then I do want to say that there was also, same idea is that we needed to create a sign acknowledging the state's funding source for the project. And in the sign, we give credit to the CPA committee, Subcommittee Conservation Trust, Kestrel Land Trust, and the state's Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. So they wanted to have evidence that that sign had been generated as part of this process. So I initiated the creation of the sign with this funding source.
So, just to be clear to you guys, as he explained to the CPA committee, the urgency of doing this on that date had to do a lot with the grant that we were getting. If we didn't pay for the closing costs and we delayed the closing, it could be a big issue, correct?
Correct.
And it was expedited throughout the council and the meetings and everything else back in June, so that we met that date.
We met that date,
Yeah.
right, so that's nice of Michael, I'm glad he had that much money in his, because I wouldn't have. Okay.
So I have some questions. The 25th was a Tuesday of this June.
Right. Yeah, I don't, let me,
That left you till the 28th to actually record. I thought I heard Thursday.
if you pulled up the date and the 25th was a Tuesday, then
That's what
I
this
believe
calendar
the closing
says.
was on the 25th.
Okay. So that would have been a Tuesday. Just,
Yeah.
I don't know how important it was to actually do it that day as opposed to Wednesday or Thursday, but in any case, it's exemplary, in my opinion, that an employee would write a personal check to take care of business. That's the way things should be done. It's exemplary. That's to be commended as highly as one can possibly do that, to write that check to make business happen. question I have though is the paperwork that's behind it. How much money did we spend on the acquisition? How much was it budgeted for the total acquisition
It's
anyway?
like 300 something.
For CPA, it was 380.
380.
And then there's the matching grants from Park and everything.
Park grant was 400.
So how did that all come into the closing costs? Wasn't that anticipated as part of the original?
I think he explained that.
I thought,
Yeah, Jamie, chime in. I didn't say.
I was under the impression there was some, was it taxes or?
It was unanticipated closing costs.
fees that-
So I'd like to know what the closing costs were, what the closing statement looks like. And when you go to a closing, you get a sheet that gives you a balance, seller side, buyer side, and it tells you what the expenses are. So then you'll know, well, we anticipated this expense and that expense, and this one was unanticipated. Unless you know offhand, what was the unanticipated expenses?
No, I don't. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I can find that out. That's fine.
I think
It's-
to do
it's
a due
known-
diligence, it's something that we should be
Yeah.
asking.
Sure. It's a known item. I just don't have that. I didn't bring that.
If, just for me in the future, that's a great question. But why not ask Jeff to provide that for you tonight? You could write him an email and he would have gotten it for you. And then now we, I don't want to delay the vote. I mean, he's going to get it for the council, so you'll have it. But just,
I mean-
if you guys have questions that you think require some research, let's get it to the people
I
that come.
have no problems doing that. We're
Okay.
still running on a little back with the debt.
I'm sorry, I'm just telling you that I don't want to delay things because it's a great idea, if you want to see the closing
This was
costs.
not straightforward by any means. So what had happened was,
Yeah.
the back, this
There's a
Castro.
long backstory, and I know we had to get it done.
Yeah.
I just want like to see the paperwork.
Sure, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I think it's there was a series of events. So Kestrel Land Trust attorney did a lot of the title search and a lot of the. So I don't know all the ins and outs of what goes into a closing, but Kestrel's attorney was doing a lot of the paperwork, and then it was transferred to Bacon Wilson for the city to take and verify. And then my understanding is that it was Bob Spencer and Mark Tanner at the closing with our procurement officer and probably the seller's attorney.
So Mike might know all about it, right?
Yes, no, I don't think that this is a, I think that the costs are known, I just don't have that information.
Well, if you could just
What it
email
was
that
exactly.
to Jake, well, all of us.
I think it went.
I'll forward it to the council.
Chapter.
Yeah, but the closing statements were, if there are copies, in fact, if it's relevant that they were personal checks used, copies of the personal checks.
Oh, well, you know, that all, yeah, that's all paperwork that has to go through the auditor, that's already
Right.
been done, so,
Yeah, so you have access to that.
oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you referenced it
Cover letter.
Yep.
in the letter.
Yep, that's fine.
It's good to, if we're gonna authorize an additional expense, I think it's important for us to see that documentation.
Okay. Anything else, Jake?
Well, the sign, I guess I was questioning how that became unanticipated. Isn't every CPA project require a sign? As I recall, this is...
Permanent one, right?
Yeah, a permanent sign that says, this was, or semi-permanent, this was purchased with CPA funds.
I might be.
I would expect that that's...
I'm going to say that all of the money may not be for unanticipated costs. The sign cost
That's fair, yeah.
was not estimated until they realized that they had to put something in for the park grant, and the state wanted it there, the Kestrel Trust. We require a sign for CPA.
That's good.
Usually they pay for it out of
Out
the
of the
applicant's
CPA,
money.
out of-
Whoever's applying.
Right.
But if there's other people involved, and those grant parties require a signage too, you put them all in one sign, you're solving all the problem.
Yeah.
So, and that cost probably wasn't anticipated or estimated at the
It
time.
may not have been estimated, but
It was, so this is good, you're making me choose my words more carefully. So the closing costs were unanticipated and occurred at closing. The registry of deeds filing was necessary to complete the paperwork.
which is a standard expense that always is there. I mean, to file any documents, $75 or whatever that is.
It's $75. It wasn't in the $400,000 grant. It wasn't in the 308 to purchase. So it had to come from somewhere. So all I'm trying to do is rebuild back the zoning incentive fund. This is all associated with the CPA acquisition. So had we had added we would have added, $380 and $3,000 if we knew everything when we came to CPA around. So I'm just trying to recoup the $75 cost. And then the sign was to show that the state acknowledged a lot that this was helping them as much as it was helping us. So we were not set to close until October.
Right.
And when we got word in May that if we could close by June 30th, then all of this was in order to
Everything would fall into place.
get access to another $85,000 grant that Kestrel really needed.
Yep.
So the sign acquisition was necessary to show that we had initiated the sign creation before the closing. So that was what they had asked. So I couldn't get through CPA process fast enough.
Additional request.
Right. So that's why I used the zoning incentive fund to cover that cost.
Mhm.
And I'm just sort of simply asking to repay that account, because all of this would have been
All sounds reasonable.
if we hadn't hit the fast button. So the statement, the closing statements, I have no problem with, and the proof of the check, all that stuff had already been submitted to the auditor
Good.
to make the payment.
So this seems to be an urgent one to pursue.
I'd like it done, yes. I don't see why we should wait. I mean, that information isn't gonna change the reason for it.
It'll change my vote after I know I need to see that. Right.
Okay, well, you could abstain tonight and decide later. We'll do it, but-
Well, I just think as a procedure, it's important to have that kind of documentation. If you're gonna say something was unanticipated, you should explain what was anticipated and then what wasn't anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all due respect, I don't want this to go to the next Senate council meeting. This is something that the city attorney needs to give you the information on. I was not involved in the closing. I have the canceled check from Mr. Owens,
Yeah.
but you're asking questions that I'm not prepared to answer. So this is not urgent.
Well, I don't see any reason to hold it up if we just need an email with the documents on it.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with that.
I would agree. I don't see any reason not to.
Unless you don't get the
It's not
information. If you don't get the information, we could
Extend it at the public hearing.
continue the public hearing, but I believe you'll get the information in a week. It's a week tonight.
So I'm fine with that, and I'll abstain for tonight.
Yeah, and I'll vote in
Oh, that's
favor
what,
of that.
okay, that's what you meant tonight in your vote? I just wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't vote for it.
But you'll be okay voting
Without
tonight?
that
Okay.
request
Yeah.
not fulfilled.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion to approve it to the full council for the next meeting for a public
Okay.
hearing.
All right.
I'll abstain.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So you second it, right?
Yes, I'll second it. Well, you can second a motion.
I can
even though
second
you-
and then abstain, yes, you can do that.
Technically, the chair is not supposed to do this.
You want-
but I-
I'll let you second.
And, okay. I just want to make sure.
The next one was the 15? Which one are we going to? I'm trying to remember my damn... $20,000.
20,000. Okay.
So as he explained to us at the meeting, we were trying to get a grant for the design, and it fell through. And one of the things, it's like a catch-22, we have to have the design before we can get the grant, and they were trying to use the grant to pay for the design. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
So we've had this happen a lot at CPA where we've approved a project and they need to, the project has to have a design done before they can get the grant money they need. So as he explained, the 45,000 grant wasn't approved, so this was to $20,000 to cover the remaining needs for the design for the trails. And the trails on this new land will then be, hopefully apply for a park grant, am I correct? Those park grants are great, we should keep going for them.
We should, and that's part of the story here, which is that coincidentally, and the next item addresses the grant. I was receiving a grant, and the administrator of the park program was there. So I chatted, which I always try to do, with her about this project. And she was very encouraging of the fact that the park program funds construction drawings and construction as one project. But
There's one.
yep, the creation of construction drawings and then going into construction, because through there you have cost estimates already identified.
Right.
The missing link is a preliminary concept that has had some community discussion and what do you want to actually build. So both the Mass Trails, which is the grant that we applied for, and Park, they just don't generally fund those preliminary discussions because nothing may ever come of that. And so I think they have a harder time
So this
funding.
design, as I recall, this design that you're going to get is not just conceptual, but will give you a pretty good estimate of the cost.
We should be able to understand what the potential cost would be, but it's not construction drawings.
Right.
What it is, the scope of this would be the chosen consultant going out. We have topography surveys, we have property surveys, and we have a lot of data, but we don't have anything about where trees are, where a path might go, where the parking area can lay out. So we're looking for the preliminary designs to be prepared and then brought to at least one community meeting where people can provide their
That's right.
input as to what we would want to see.
Like the dog park.
Right, but I think in a little bit more detail. I mean, I think the dog park is taking 7 sites and just trying to get to one, and then do preliminary
Then do
design work.
preliminary design, yeah.
So the information that I got was that if we could come up with a preliminary design for the East Street parcel, then we've done that step, and that would be the basis for us to apply for Park in July. So their funding in the past couple of years has opened up in July, and we make the application. And we would have, in my opinion, we'd have a much stronger application if we're applying to bring this preliminary design to construction drawing level and then construction.
And it will give them a good idea of cost. So when you apply for CPA funds and when you apply for park grant funds or whatever funds you can get, they're going to have at least a fairly accurate idea of the cost, not precise.
Right. Yeah.
But, and then you could go high, like we did for the pickleball courts, and then hope that the estimate, the construction costs are below it.
Yeah, they would be able to do that because you want to, the park grants are up to 400,000. So we would want to know that whatever the cost is to create construction drawing is, so let's say 75,000 or something. Then the remainder would be applied to construction of the actual improvement, and that's where the target is. Taking one step back to the Trails grant, we applied for, the total amount of that project would have been 45,000. And so the concept of the Trails grant was the preliminary design and construction drawings all at once. But similarly, the Mass Trails people said, we had a debriefing conference call, and she said, we're funding the construction of trails, not the design. So I'm trying to be aggressive and read between the lines, and if we can fund the preliminary designs and have them done for July, we'll have the basis for park grant application for construction drawings and construction.
That's important too, because I think the CPA committee would look at it too. A good idea of what the end result will be.
Yes, I think it's an opportunity for people to walk.
Especially for the community to see, like you did with Ferry Street, to see pictures of what we're getting.
Yep, we would get renderings.
And that was excellent. I love that, the Ferry Street stuff you got.
I envision the ability, once there's input, to stake out a potential route and a path, and then, so this site has, at the top of the hill is a location of a former house. And so there's an opportunity to do some visioning about what that would look like. So it needs to be, revegetated, but the conversations with Kestrel have always been some kind of pavilion, a structure or a sitting area or a gathering area.
And it's up high so you can see out over the city.
We have nothing else to go from other than those thoughts, and so this plan would articulate that. So.
Is that looks like almost like a restaurant type house that has a bunch of windows on the top? It's kind
I've
of
never
like halfway
seen
up
the
the
house.
mountain.
It's been demolished. It was
Oh, it
demolished
has?
as part of
Okay.
the process to acquire.
I think I came across it once hiking. It was actually a pretty cool structure.
Yeah.
Yes, it seems like it kind of was modern.
Yeah.
And
and
1960s.
60s.
With windows on the front and everything else.
Any questions, Joe or Jake?
The only question I had, because this plan was, the 20,000 was supposed to be, in essence, taken out of the grant money, would this get reimbursed later if we applied for a grant, getting it back, or is this all just gone once we do that because it's kind of separate now from the later plans that are becoming?
Correct. This would be funds spent separate from any grant,
Okay.
because it's not reimbursable.
Okay.
And as I said, CPA does this often.
Yeah, I know, but the original plan was that this was gonna be paid for from the grant money. Now,
Well, and take,
Plans change, I
the,
guess, but-
you didn't get there was a cover letter which didn't make it into the packet.
Yeah.
Yes, it did. I got a cover though, didn't I? Maybe I didn't.
I think the CPA got the cover letter, and I don't think the.
Yeah,
I don't think I included it in the appropriation memo.
yeah, I just have the,
So.
Yeah, I don't have that, so what does it say?
So for the breakdown of the Mass Trails grant, which was, where we were unsuccessful, the grant request was $33,750, and CPA voted to provide a 20% match, which would have been, the CPA already voted to allocate $11,250. So instead of $11,250 as a match, we're
20,000.
bumping it up to $20,000 to cover the process that comes with preliminary.
so that money was never even touched, it was just,
Correct.
it was approved, but not.
Right, we didn't get the grant, so.
And that was just money that the CPA committee set aside.
Right.
It never went through, it was never actually appropriated through council.
Right.
Okay.
So
we
at
didn't get
that
the
point, it
grant.
was, if the grant was awarded,
Then we'd have
then
to
they
go
would come
through that
back to
appropriation.
CPA to actually get that
Okay.
appropriation amount, so.
Yeah, a lot of times when they go for grants, they just need commitment from the CPA, not necessarily actual funds in place.
Gotcha.
When they get the grant, then we get the, we've done that a couple times. Anything, JP?
I can certainly understand the agency that you're dealing with on the state level saying, hey, we want to fund construction and not preliminaries that may not go anywhere. Is there another source of funds somewhere that we could be looking for that can help us with the preliminaries? Because usually, we're used to sitting here in finance and on the council saying, okay, what did we leverage? What are the additional funds we're using CPA funds for? Okay, we put in 20 and we're gonna get X, 100,000 more. Or we look to the public to contribute, a fundraise. certain
Generally.
funds for football, whatever the issue is.
We
Here,
do that
we're
with the
just
main
spending-
project, but for design, the CPA committee usually doesn't mind funding 100% because
And it-
what it is doing, it's kind of leveraging future grants.
Future grant,
If we
right.
don't have the design, we can't get the future grant. So it's like, and as I said, it's a catch-22, we have to
So
do it.
It is, and we have to do it. I just didn't know if there might be something out there, keep your antenna up for something.
Design grants, like a design grant?
You probably tried all this.
I would, yes.
I'm sure you
That's
think
what
about
I
it.
thought the intent.
Don't sleep at night
Certainly my.
dreaming about it, yeah.
When I first met him, I thought his name was Grant.
Yeah.
So it seemed that way. No, I think your point's well
There's a tube
taken.
with his name on it.
We're trying. It's you don't know unless you try. And I
Sure.
thought that the Mass Trails grant was that opportunity to seek grant funding for the preliminary design. We certainly went all
Tried.
in. We went all in on that.
Tried, which is good.
I will say, like, just in full disclosure, that I think Danny just said this, but the request right now is a full project from CPA. Park grant does require a match, so if everything moved forward, we would likely be back to ask CPA for a potential match of the park grant for construction. But at that point, we would definitely be leveraging CPA funds to get the larger park grant and combining them together. And I think we would have partners in this.
Kestrel and everybody else.
Kestrel and Piscomic, and I can't say that they would necessarily contribute to trying to construct the trails, but the conversations that we've been having are about endowment or stewardship if it is constructed, and that's where that's where they want to be.
Because all of these trails are pretty much maintained by the
Right.
Stoneway Trust. They're orchestral. They're not maintained by our Park and Rec department or something.
Right.
So that's to me is sweat equity that
Right.
they're doing as volunteers.
And that's very similar to the dog park, which is, unfortunately, we can't really build the support for an endowment until there's more progress towards a product. So if we're successful, as I hope we are, getting a park grant for construction, you know, if we get a park grant for construction of the design that we, you know, as community members, then we'll have a lot of momentum for an endowment process or a fundraiser or contributions to maintain it.
To
So,
maintain it.
right. So that is not.
This is all just another step in the process.
Right.
You all in?
I'm all in.
How about you?
Yes,
May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the $20,000 and up to
JP?
$20,000.
Move.
I second.
All in favor? Aye, aye, aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last one is what I really enjoyed, because one of the biggest things I like to support is affordable housing in this community. And it's one of the primary tenets of the CPA, and we approved this wholeheartedly at the CPA level. We have to have, now I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, we have to have this updated plan. We're going to move forward trying to get grants for future affordable housing projects, like the Everett Street one. If we have this in place, it gives those grant authorities knowledge that you've done a study. Is that correct? Am I right there? Anyway, we have to have it.
Yep.
And we have to update it because it's been, what, I forget,
At least 7 years,
10 years?
2014.
14.
Yeah, it expires again at end of 2020.
And once they expire, it's hard. I'll let you finish, but we very much need this, and it's something that will, again, in the future, be able to be used to leverage affordable housing grants from different grant authorities. So I'll let you, Jeff.
Thank you. I think that was a good assessment. We have identified housing, you know, understanding our housing market demand and supply has been identified for about a year. So the EDIC committee has been talking about that for quite some time. And, you know, they generally tasked me with trying to help figure that out, and so I was on the prowl for an opportunity to do a housing needs assessment, which was how this all started. And this is the same. So initially we applied for a planning grant through the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. It's the same funding source that we used for the downtown strategic plan. So we applied for a grant for a housing needs assessment and added some components to look at barriers to the development of new housing, and then, you know, addressing corresponding zoning changes that they find that were important, and then pursuing some thoughtful approaches on accessory dwelling units. So the
Equity too, that Scott bring that up?
what's that?
Scott brought something up, and I remember you said
Yeah,
add that
he brought up fair housing and
equity or something.
yeah, the federal government's requirements for fair housing. The accessory dwelling units is something that the state is encouraging municipalities to look at as a way to provide new housing units that are generally attainable for people. So that was the original application for a grant, and we were awarded the $35,000 for that study. And that's really important. It's critical timing for us to do this. Meanwhile, the city's committees, so the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership, have been talking for several months about the need to update the housing production plan. And so, you know, Jamie and I have been talking, and the committee have been talking about finding a funding source to update the housing production plan, and that's specifically for affordable housing and the city's affordable housing goals. So, I think Councilor Riss actually brought up the idea of trying to merge the two together. So there's a lot of data collection for both of these. And so there's a win-win for us to try to merge these two together, which is it's the same data, it's a lot of the same analysis that would be done for both the market rate study and the affordable housing study. So what we're doing is trying to take a $35,000 grant and make it a $50,000 grant. And
So it's 15 and 35, so that's kind of good, because the grant, it doesn't require an exact match, it just requires some money.
correct. And it makes it more appealing for a consultant to do this type of project. It's like slightly larger. And out of this, with the $15,000 contribution from CPA, we get the updated housing production plan, which has been on the list for some time. And so generally, the estimated cost of a housing production plan would be $25,000 or $30,000. So by merging the two, we're consolidating the data collection, and we're making it more efficient for a consultant to come in and do both parts.
So you put an RFP out, and
The
you
RFP
have
is-
consultants in the area that do this work?
Yep, the RFP is currently out, and I believe the submission date is going to be December 9th for consultants to submit proposals.
Cool. And when do they, oh, we have to do it before August 20th. I
Correct.
assume you want it back like June. What is the date that they'll have it done? I forgot to ask this at the meeting. What was your RFP?
I think the RFP says that we have an updated production plan submitted to DHCD by August 20th.
Okay, so you're giving them the entire length.
Just from previous years, when we've done it, we've had the report done, and then DHCD has to review it and approve it, and also has to get the final report needs to be authorized by City Council. So the date of the 2013 update, it wasn't actually approved, didn't get all the authorizations until the end of, or August of 2014, it took almost another year.
So you're going to get this back from the consultants before August 20th, because it has to go to a couple places. You said the city council.
Right.
Okay.
But it just as sometimes we can't control the state's process and how long they're going to take to
No,
review it.
we saw that with the charter. I don't even go there.
We do our best, and
Who had it back in time?
Just barely, with a lot of phone calls.
Yeah,
Tom
next
Pete,
meeting.
poor guy.
That's right.
We had to do an extra meeting, you're right.
Emergency meeting.
So this doesn't require anybody in the legislature to do anything, right? Then you're all set. It might be a little easier to get through. Well, as I said, if this gets us, well, first of all, it's leveraging $35,000, which is what the CPA committee loves. And it also, to me, gives us the information we need. We're going to have the new schools coming out, the old schools, and we're going to have this Everett Street project. The plan in place gets us a chance to get more money, I think. So that's the whole purpose of it, right? It's to facilitate grant allocation.
Yeah, I think it needs to come up with strategies to provide more housing and provide more affordable housing. I think that's the other goal is to provide more housing. I think that's, there's a lot of anecdotal information out there, and this is where, at the EDIC, there's a lot of anecdotal information. We do not have any updated data on the housing trends or the housing projections, both market rate or affordable. I think the underwriting theme for the affordable housing is that we need more. The production plan currently says, I think the target, and I could be wrong, but the target is approximately 35 units per year is the goal. And we had, a couple of good years when 15 Cottage came online and when Parsons Village got created. But other than that, there have been only a few units created. So that's always a need. But what I didn't see in that housing production plan is clearer strategies or potential properties that could be suitable for development or anything, that actually gave us.
So they're going to target some open
concrete
space or places like that we could convert some building into housing.
I think that's the idea, and the partnership has talked a lot about tools for smaller developers. So we have a project on Cottage Street that should come online in the next couple of years, and it's 19 units, 4 of which are affordable, but, you know, that process, I think, is really challenging.
Is that the
for
one where the
smaller
bill was?
Yeah, a smaller developer to
The guy that-
come up with the process to incorporate affordable units is challenging.
The
It's-
guy that
I
owns
thought
seven.
that was being built.
It's a private builder, we're not paying any money for it.
Correct.
But
Right.
it's something that he's willing to do.
It's coming online.
The construction should start late.
Did they get the permit?
Yeah.
They got their planning board approval.
That's great.
And my understanding is that they're preparing to talk to the building department about development. So, but that's just an example of a barrier to creating affordable housing units, which is that it's super challenging. So, you know, the partnership has talked a lot about that.
A lot of that has to do with the regulations surrounding fair housing. And so when you have affordable housing, you have to provide an equal opportunity to all people who, you know, you can, by income, but you can't just make it available to people who live in one neighborhood. And so when you have a affordable rental property and you're trying to comply with the fair housing laws, it's a lot of there's a lot of red tape around what you have to do, having lotteries, outreach, showing that you've done your due diligence to have a fair and open process, and that's hard to do for developers only doing a couple of units.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to go through.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions?
It would seem like that would be something you could sub out to an agency that just does that. A contract. No, you know, all we do is just control the process and making sure it's fair. We come in, you have an advertising.
That's just another expense.
It's not something for us to do, but it would seem that,
It's almost the step
because
before.
the guy who's banging the nails for 3 units or 5 units, they don't have the expertise or the
Yeah.
ability.
So part of it is that, so there are, like, Valley Community Development Corporation, Wayfinders, they do this type of work.
They want to go to 35 or 40
But,
units or
right,
50.
and the problem is that you own it for the life of the unit. So you might get $1,000 or $2,000, but every time that unit switches, over, you need to have a new process. And so it just, they're not,
That
it's very,
can be
it's very
cumbersome.
expensive
That can be
for them to do it, even just for the units that
Yeah.
that they maintain. They're not, when we've reached out to different organizations that have this capability, they don't want to take it on for a unit that they're not getting any rental income out of.
Okay, any questions? Question, Bill? Okay.
What about the questions?
Go ahead, Bill, go ahead.
You mentioned also accessory apartments in your conversation, and I
Yes.
wasn't quite sure if you could just in like limit you to 1 minute. How does that fit into the affordable? But you weren't thinking of affordable housing, not an accessory.
It's also a market rate study.
You were thinking,
If you take the word affordable and you there's a capital A, affordable, which is the state definition.
State
of affordable,
definition,
right?
that's what I'm thinking,
And then
yeah.
and then the word I've been trying to use to describe this is housing that's attainable. So
Yep.
it's at a reasonable cost.
yeah,
And the evidence.
Workforce, I like that.
Well, it's, you know, and I guess my understanding, I have used the term workforce housing, and apparently that is not in vogue
Won't be
anymore.
anytime, okay.
So they're coming up with all these other words to describe units that are attainable for a wider range of people. So whether you're elderly or lower income, the evidence coming and the messages being pushed from the state, so the governor's office and all of their sub-agencies, DHCD and the other offices are pushing the idea of accessory dwelling units as a way to create new units that are attainable for a wider range of incomes.
mhm.
So through the UDIC discussions, there's a strong observation that we need housing suitable for our older population, and these accessory dwelling units are a less expensive way to get new units that are 1 story, they would in theory come with, you know, the other unit on the property that might do lawn care or snow removal and all these things, that you kind of get this second unit that could be available for lower income people or for seniors. So
Well, they're not tiny houses,
they're not tiny, they don't have to be tiny houses, they're just second units, but
but on the same property.
so as part of the initial, sorry, I'm way over my minute, but as part of the initial grant.
That's another question.
Yeah. Well, the initial grant application, we talked to Cannon Real Estate and Taylor Real Estate. And what they said was that in this market, to buy a vacant parcel is X, and that $X is a lot, because then you have to build a new house. So the idea of these second units is that the numbers are for about 100,000 to 120,000. You could create a new unit that, if you rent that, the rental rate would be generally attainable because it's at a lower cost. And so you cut out the need to buy a separate
A
parcel.
new
to create
parcel
the
that
second
has to be supported by the structure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just one part of a housing strategy.
What infill do we have? Would you consider us up to speed on infill zoning as Northampton? I consider Northampton.
No, we are always a little bit behind what Northampton is doing. I mean, I think this is one method of infill.
That's one method. I'm thinking of greater methods.
No, but I
Greater
think
intensity, and would that be studied in the housing?
it should be. Yes, I think one of the specific asks is to provide a detailed Easthampton specific set of findings and recommendations on barriers and solution to encourage the
That's
creation.
what
Yep. So we want to increase incentives. So provide recommendations for amendments to increase incentives for projects that may incorporate certain design standards, identify other barriers or impediments, inconsistencies, or unintended consequences. And then we're asking, so this would give us some foundation for us to pursue other zoning amendments. This won't give us everything we need, but it'll give us a roadmap to pursue. Because we are not set up properly for infill development. Everything requires a special permit. The area calculations are off. Like we're not, and this report should identify where the key issues are to unlock some of that.
We allow accessory apartments right now, but they're by special permit and only for single-family homes.
Yeah.
And so not, so if you have a duplex, you can't add an accessory.
An accessory to a duplex or a triplex.
I'm just talking about infill zoning
You do all the-
and new land. Don't you need new land to start that kind of thing?
Well, infill is looking at underutilized parcels and figuring out, within the character of the neighborhood, could you support another unit? And there are a lot of even our more historic neighborhoods often have that outbuilding that we want to make it as easy as possible for that to either be converted or for the parcel that doesn't have that outbuilding to be able to put a new structure there.
I
for housing.
understand. Okay, good.
It lowers the cost of housing overall
Exactly.
and utilizes currently watered and sewered spaces.
Yep.
And also land that exists, as
Land
you
that
say.
exists,
There's
rather than going out to
primary
the
unit on
country or the
land.
woods, and now cutting down more trees,
Yeah.
building more roads somewhere, you're maximizing the usage within the character of the existing neighborhoods. There's a lot to be said for
I like it. Anything else? Good.
So I'm going back to the 15,000, and I
Yep.
just a point of clarity, I guess, on the process, right? So this is, we got a grant for 35,000.
Yes.
That is going to help or provide this study that we need. And the $15,000 just to kind of sweeten that pot, right? It's not necessarily going to be used, right? So if you said it could be a $25,000 study, like when you get your bids in for the people that are going to do it, it could be less than the 35,000, right? Or do you see it?
I think you were referencing one half of it was
We will get, as a deliverable,
Mhm.
we'll get an updated housing production plan.
Yep. No, I
Right?
understand
So,
what we're going to
okay,
get.
So then I think I did not.
So my thing is the cost of the study, right? Is you said it could be anywhere maybe around 25,000, and you might have lowballed it or whatever when we get the cost back of how much it's going to take for these folks to do the study, right? you have the bid out there and it's, you know, it's due back December 9th.
Yep.
And say you get 3 bids and they're all around $30,000 for what you need done.
Right.
Then we don't need the 15,000, right?
Yes, except that, as I've done with a couple of the other grant applications, I've asked for a lot. I hate to keep using the word anecdotal, but anecdotally, there are a lot of people who would like to work in Easthampton right now. There's a lot of Easthampton, from the outside, things are happening in Easthampton. It's a fun place to work. So like the consultant who's working on the downtown plan has applauded us publicly and privately that you guys are doing great. You know, for Western Mass, like there's stuff happening, you're trying, you're exploring.
Yeah.
So I've asked for quite a bit in here.
Okay.
My expectation is that, so the total budget for the project is $50,000.
Yep.
So when you combine the two sources.
Yep.
My expectation is that the proposals will come in at 50.
Okay.
And within that, we're gonna get a housing production plan. We're getting.
Oh, no, I'm sure we're getting
a
money's
housing
worth.
needs
Mhm.
component, which is the market rate. So that looks at the demographic.
He's combining two different things.
Yep.
I think you understood that, and
Yep.
if I'm.
So my question, I
Yes.
guess, that is on the order of operations, right? So this is a public meeting, it's gonna be broadcasted, right?
Mhm.
We got the grant for 35,000, but if the people submitting the bid watch the video, they know that the budget's now 50,000, so are they gonna submit their bids at 50,000? You know, just because they know how much money we're playing with or what we have to approve to bid for.
The bid gets advertised as the total budget is 50.
And it was, total budget was
Yeah.
advertised as 50,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And they're
I guess.
also competing with each other, so hopefully that allays it. But I think he brings up a point. If, let's say the final bids are 45,000, there's $5,000 left.
Yep, okay.
Does the grant you got require that the R15 be paid first and they get their 5 back? Because sometimes we ask the CPA to be reimbursed first. So I'm just curious, I think Bill's question goes to something I never asked, is what happens to that extra 5 if we have a break there? Or do we need to keep it in case we have supplemental requests that we need to get done by the consultant?
I am hazarding a guess right here, but if the proposals if the consultant selected came in with a bid that's less than 50, I would be happy reducing the amount of CPA funds.
Well, I'm glad to hear that,
I
that's
don't
great.
think
I didn't
that-
know
I
if the
think-
grant had a requirement that you spend
No, as
community
of
money
right now, the grant, you know, we allocated a match for the grant,
Mhm.
and we're repurposing the match to get something additional for the city. So, you know, I have committed to make this work. I committed the zoning incentive funds as the match. You know, to not blink an eye, to not miss this opportunity. I've already ensured that we have the match. What I'm trying to do is instead replace the zoning incentive fund with the CPA to get a housing production plan, which is something that's really desirable and tax sensitive.
And very much eligible for CPA funds.
Correct, right? We've confirmed that. I'm just, you have something to
Yeah,
add?
so what I was gonna say is, I mean, to Bill's point, the way that this RFP is being advertised is for a price proposal separate from the
That's true, yeah.
submission of the credentials of the firm. So what we look at is first we're gonna look at their proposal, irrespective of their bid price. There's some 2 sealed envelopes, so
Correct.
we get the evaluation is we're gonna choose the best firm regardless of what their price is. Once
Okay.
we've chosen the best firm, then we look at what their cost proposal is, and if it's, you know, let's say it comes in at 48, then we accept it. And if
So you
they're
don't
at-
have
and
to
they're
go-
at
you don't have to
57,
accept the
then
low bid?
we have to negotiate how to get down to what we have funding for.
Okay.
Credentials is a priority then, not low bid?
Correct.
Oh, that's
That's even
interesting.
better.
That's better. Great.
Now, when you advertise this, you know, proposal out there, you put the price of $50,000 when you submit it out there? So it's like a ballpark, so they have an idea?
The advertisement itself does not list it, but the RFP document does.
Okay, so when they're looking through the details of what we're looking for, the 50,000's noted.
It is,
Okay.
because I mean, the intent is that that's what we have. So
Yep.
a consultant who comes in and says, we can do this for 75,000, then
why would they bother?
They're not
Because-
gonna pass the price proposal test. so-
Gotcha.
Right.
And that was my question.
Well, I like the fact, and you're certain that the CPA can be reimbursed or first or not, we don't have to use all the $15,000 fund.
I can't think of a reason why.
Did the EDA grant require a match?
The EA grant required a match.
Yeah, but if it,
So then that probably wouldn't be, they would probably.
we'll find out, because the proposals will undoubtedly, if there's 3 people, they're gonna be less than 50, so that they can try to compete price-wise, right? Or is it gonna be just based on credentials, and they're all gonna be 50 grand? You don't
That's a
know.
good question.
Right, well, whatever. It's nice to hear, because we do have a lot of projects on this list where we get money back, because they don't spend it all.
Right.
So a lot of it is reimbursement and things like that, and we
So
like.
those are good questions. So we're glad about that.
So I could take a motion here, unless you guys have more?
I mean, I'll make a motion to approve $15,000 to go towards the housing production plan.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public hearings for these, Jeff, and you said Janet Tatro, she's a chairman of the Board of Fair Housing. She's gonna come and talk about this particular project and what it means for the city, so she couldn't be here tonight, but
Could we
Great.
just find that out for that information for the public hearing?
Yes.
Because I'd like to know, who would get the reimbursement? Say it is $5,000. Does the grant now go to $30,000 and we put in the $15,000 still?
No. Right. Yeah. No. I will double check that, but because we did commit a match to the EEA grant, but it was less than the 15,000. So let me double check
Okay.
that. But
All right.
I am comfortable asserting that because the grant funders, as generous as they are, I mean, their product is the housing needs. So that what we propose in the grant, so that's what that 35 is for.
Mhm.
We're just trying to make this serve two purposes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll be prepared for that question next Wednesday.
And-
Which is great that you're combining the two.
Yeah,
and
that saves
making
money.
them, because some of the base.
it's the same consultant that we hired, if you hired
It's
Big
really
twice.
data is
Yeah.
being developed.
It's really the data, and I didn't. I'm sorry. Let me close. I know
No,
that
you're good.
there are. I asked for a lot. So, out of this, I've asked for an outline or a draft master plan. So I've been trying to activate various projects. So master plan is broken down into topics.
Right.
Economic development, open
Open
space,
space, yeah.
and so we did the arts visioning, which is sort of really honing in on what arts and culture should look like in the next 10 years. And here's kind of the opportunity to explore housing.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I've asked for the consultant to prepare a draft master plan chapter outlining and incorporating a summary of the findings and goals, objectives. and
Is that the
strategies.
RFP you're reading from?
Yes,
Can you send that to us?
I will. I'm happy to do that.
That way we have information.
And then just moving backwards, so that incorporates both elements, like
Yeah.
affordable housing and market rate housing, and what do we want to do, and how do we want to approach it going forward. To prepare site-specific evaluations and conceptual site plans showing various development scenarios. So there are some, review a variety of key sites and provide a series of conceptual designs, build out analysis, and that's under conventional development, existing zoning, and progressive zoning options. So that would serve both purposes as well. So if we're looking at housing, if you're actually just building housing, the income levels isn't really that relevant. So we want to explore a little bit like where could housing go?
Attainable housing and affordable housing.
Correct.
I like that word, attainable.
Yep, and then providing a detailed, specific set of findings and recommendations on what are our barriers and what are our opportunities and how do we kind of move those forward. I've asked for a draft zoning ordinance to allow the creation of accessory dwelling units by right. And the idea is that there are often probably 5 or 6 things that are generally of concern when you're building a second unit. So where's the driveway gonna go? Can you put up a screen or a fence or something and it doesn't meet setbacks? So if we can incorporate those into zoning and make it so that a person could just get a building permit, then we've removed a huge barrier to creating a second unit.
And the consultant's gonna give you that information so that if you have to change zoning, you'll have that information.
Correct. And then it's update the housing production plan, and it's to do the housing needs assessment. So the narrative here is that it would be data driven. So we'll collect the data on our housing trends.
Mhm.
It'll identify the supply, and it'll identify the projected demand. which we expect to say we don't have enough supply and we need more housing, and then the next couple steps
How to
are
get there.
set up to how to get there. Yeah. So that's the big picture that I just probably didn't present.
No, I
initially.
understood that. Yeah, I understood that when you were doing it.
Okay, I want to adjourn, guys.
Second.
Move to adjourn? Second, favor?
Aye.